All right, welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today our guest is Eileen Grubba. Eileen is an award-winning actress, writer, public speaker, and producer. She's appeared recently in HBO's Watchmen, CBS's SWAT, Netflix's The Politician, and I could keep going on and on. She's been in a lot of things. She's been nominated 3 times for Best Actress award in indie films and has multiple wins for Best Ensemble Cast in the female lead. She's also won multiple awards for her disability-inclusive short films. Eileen was paralyzed from the waist down as a child, and we'll get into this in the interview, after a vaccine attacked her spinal cord, leaving her with a C1, C4 injury. And she's also beat cancer, so she's had all these crazy things happen in her life. As a result, she's now an advocate for hiring of people with disabilities in film, television, and advertising, and today we're going to talk a lot about how to be more inclusive in our schools for kids with disabilities. Eileen, we're so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
This is great. So I led with this a little bit in the bio, but let's talk about your childhood and this experience that you had with getting paralyzed and how that all went down. If you can just kind of walk us through that.
Okay, so I was a happy, healthy, active, normal child, and I was running through the park with my sister and brothers one day, and we were doing flips and doing all the things we always do. And at one point, I did a flip and I landed, and suddenly I couldn't feel my legs anymore. I couldn't get up. I couldn't walk. And I ended up dragging myself across the park on my elbows to get to my mom. Well, it took a while for them to realize that something was really wrong because she didn't see anything broken. I wasn't hurting. There was no blood. But by the end of the day, my paralysis was moving up my spine. So they realized that 30 days earlier, we had vaccines for school, and I had gotten a bad one, and it attacked my spinal cord. So I ended up in the hospital for quite a long time, paralyzed from the waist down. They didn't think I was going to live, but I did. And then they told my parents I would never walk again because I had a permanent spinal cord injury. So I set out in my childhood at the age of 5 in a wheelchair, trying to figure out life all over again.
Right. So what was that like? Because so you were different from this point forward, and
Yeah.
kids treated you differently.
Yes.
What was it like going through elementary school and then as you aged with this disability? How did people treat you, and maybe what do you wish had been different at that time?
Well, I still have a lot of very painful emotions when I think about my childhood, because the truth is that a lot of people, not just a few, but a lot of people were very cruel. And kids in school, sometimes teachers, and people throughout my life, because it turns out that people are very afraid of differences.
Right.
And when I got out of my wheelchair and got to starting to walk, I walked very much like a toddler for a while, just barely able to stabilize. And I got to the point where I had a walker, and then I walked with one leg and dragged the other one. And, and it was a victory for me. I was never supposed to walk again. I was dealing with all of these physical challenges. So it was quite shocking and painful to go to school and find out that everyone was going to shun me and be afraid of me and make fun of me and pick on me and not want me on the teams and the, PE classes. And it was a very, very painful transition for me. And I was going to share with you a story about how every time I moved to a new school or we moved to a new area, which happened a few times, I'd have to start all over again with the torment of children who didn't understand and who were afraid of me. And my mother kept telling me, if a child is afraid of you, it's not because of what's wrong with you. It's because of what's wrong with them. And you need to look at that and realize that there's something broken that they haven't learned yet, or they haven't figured out yet, or there's something they're afraid of. It's not you. And it was hard for me to understand that. I remember when I got into the 5th grade and started a new school, and the torment started all over again. And I was sitting by myself always at lunch when all the kids huddled in groups, and the girls in my new 5th grade were all turning and pointing and laughing and making fun. And, you know, the boys were all sitting in another section, and a few of them kept looking over and just observing what was happening. Well, the next day, the boy that all the girls had a crush on, the boy that was the most popular in school, he pulled up his chair and he sat with me at lunch. And then the next day, his friends all did too. And suddenly the girls were all looking at me like, why are they sitting with her? Why is that cool kid sitting with her? Well, it turns out, you know, he was so cool. He didn't care what other people thought of him. And he didn't understand why they were being cruel to me. And he also was on the Pee Wee football team, Little League football team with my brothers. And so he had some respect, you know, and so his coming and sitting with me in that lunch period changed my entire experience of the 5th grade and on. He taught those kids to have some respect. And what I love to do in telling my story and sharing my story is to open up people's eyes to realize that a kid that has a challenge has already been through enough. They've already been hurt, terrified, faced their life. They've sat in hospitals. They've gone through horrible surgeries, horrible treatments. They are already hurting enough, suffering enough. So for anyone to be able to be cruel to them afterwards because of their scars or their battle wounds or their limp or their wheelchair or they're missing a limb or something, to be cruel to them after is absolutely unacceptable. What we should be doing is being as caring and loving and welcoming as we can be to those kids, because guess what? In the long run, and I hope that my life is an example of this, in the long run, those kids that survive those horrible things are your strongest kids, and they are going to be your game changers. And down the road, when you're in trouble, they're going to be the ones you need in your life. They're probably going to be the ones that are going to make big impacts in our world. They're going to be the ones that, like Einstein, who had a learning disability, ended up being considered one of the most brilliant men that ever lived. Like Beethoven, who went deaf, ended up being one of the most renowned musicians of all time, composers. And there are so many examples of that. One of my heroes, Wilma Rudolph, walked with leg braces similar to the leg braces I walked with when she was a child, came from a big family like me, and everyone made fun of her because she wanted to be an athlete and run. Well, guess what she did? She was the first woman to win 3 Olympic gold medals for running.
Wow.
So I urge children to rethink what they think about disability and look at these kids as champions, as warriors, as overcomers, as people who have been through so much and they're still here for a reason. So we should be befriending those kids and figuring out what makes them so strong and what makes them so resilient, and learn from them, because those kids are going to be your game changers if they can survive the abuse of society. And it's all of our obligations to stop that abuse and remove that issue so that those kids can go out and change the world.
Right. Now, an interesting thing is, as we've run this channel now for a while and we've interviewed lots and lots of really famous people, the theme that I've seen throughout is people accomplish great things after the struggle, after the
Yes.
challenges, and people with disabilities, they're constantly engaged in that struggle. But
Yes.
all of us have issues. Now, one of the problems we're facing right now as a country is a lot of political strife and racial and cultural strife, because we're not trying to understand one another. We're not listening. We're not trying to see where other people are coming from. Now, with people with disabilities, it's often obvious that they have a disability, but not always.
But not always.
So I think that what we need to aspire to is this friend that you had in 5th grade. And this is a sensitive subject for me. I'm a 5th grade teacher. And the hardest thing that I face, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
It's okay.
I see these kids who move into the school and are the new kids, and I see the kids with the disabilities and how they're treated. And there are champions who stand by them and make things better. But there are also, and there probably always will, unfortunately, be kids who try to tear them down because they feel insecure in their own lives. And so I think part of the challenge is not just helping those with disabilities, but it's also reaching out to the bullies and trying to include them and bring them
Yeah.
into the circle so that we can all be inclusive. I don't know
Well,
if there's a good way for that.
I think there is. It's an important conversation to have, because here's the thing. I've met a lot of bullies in my lifetime. I've dealt with a lot of bullies. And here's what I do know. A bully is definitely broken on the inside. And I'm sorry for whatever happened to get them there. But they need to understand that in order to not feel broken on the inside, where they feel like they have to find people to humiliate or bring down, in order for them to not feel broken, they need to lift other people up, not crush them down. In order for them to have the friendships and the relationships that will heal what's broken inside of them, they need to connect with other people in a positive, uplifting way. So if somebody is broken inside and they decide, well, I'm going to go hurt that little girl with a limp because she's weaker than me, well, they're missing a great opportunity to connect with someone who might teach them how to heal that hole inside of them. Right. Because that little girl with that challenge knows how to heal those holes. She has to do it every day.
Yeah, that's a really good
So
point.
bullies need to have some respect and reach out to these kids and connect, protect them, connect with them, be friends with them, and then you grow and elevate together. And that person that you were going to crush will probably change your life.
Right. Now, you've had a lot of experience because you've been on both sides of this. You've been bullied, but now you're an advocate for people with disabilities, and you've spent a lot of time trying to help other people have equal opportunities, but also just to improve their quality of life. What have you learned as you've worked with others and tried to uplift them? What have you learned as far as your role as an outsider in being able to help others with disabilities?
Well, I've learned that sharing my tools for survival have helped a lot of people, a lot of cancer patients, a lot of people with disabilities, a lot of kids with challenges, because a lot of times they just need hope. They need to look at someone and have a role model and say, she did it,
right, and
I can do it. And then they need some of those tools. Like when I was going through cancer in my younger years, which was caused by probably a lot of the radiation from the x-rays from my childhood. So when I was going through that, I found and then reached out to people who survived worse cancers because I needed to know how they did it. And so I think what I've learned is that sharing my story, sharing my tools for survival, and then just encouraging people. Like there's one of the things that I've learned through the years is that we need to look at every human being as an individual. That would solve a lot of our world's problems. If we looked at everyone as an individual and we saw them for who they are and what they have to offer this world, because everybody has something that they know more than you. Everyone. There is something they know, some answer that will fit some missing pieces in your puzzle, in your life puzzle. So we need to connect with people and find out what they know and who they are and respect them. And if the two of you can help each other, then you do that. And if you can't, you keep moving, because there's billions of people on the planet. So there's plenty of people to work with through life. We don't have to spend a lot of time with those who can't respect us or can't see the good in us. And if we're not able to see the good in someone or what they bring to the table or what their valuable parts are, then we need to move on and find people we can find that with. But I think it's an important thing to really start looking at people for what their value is and the gold inside of them, because everyone has it. Everyone.
Yeah. I think you gave us a nugget here that I want the kids to really pay attention to. One of the things you talked about in your experience with cancer is you went and found people who had it worse than you, and you asked them to share with you their experience. Every person alive can go to another person that has experienced something worse than them and learn from them. And I would encourage you kids out there watching this to do that immediately. Find someone in your classroom or in your community who maybe it's obvious or maybe it's not obvious, but that has gone through something hard, and ask them about it. How did you get through that? What are you doing now?
Exactly.
That's something that can bring us together as a community, and personally you are going to benefit so much from having those conversations.
Yeah. And I've always been somebody who believes that we should be able to have those conversations, and we should be able to sit down with anyone and say, tell me about you. Tell me who you are, where you've come from, what's your life like? And not looking for judgments or reasons to crush them, but looking for where they've been and how their experience is different than yours. Because that's what makes life beautiful, is everybody's different. And by the way, that kid in the 5th grade that stood up for me, he's one of the most accomplished screenwriters in our industry right now. He had so much confidence in himself that he became this enormous success, making movies that are changing people's lives, and the kind of movies that make you stand up and cheer.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask about him, if you still knew what he was up to. That's so cool.
His name is Steve Conrad, and he did movies like The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. Look him up. He's done incredible films, and he just did one with Julia Roberts about a kid in the 5th grade who had a facial deformity and his struggle to survive the 5th grade, which I thought was an interesting coincidence. It was based on a true life story of a kid, but I thought it was an interesting coincidence that there were similar elements to what I went through in the 5th grade with him.
Is that Wonder, or is that a different project?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, so we have to put that out there because 5th graders love that story and love the movie. So
it's nice to know that the writer of that piece did that for me in the 5th grade. The kid with the severe walking disability that all the kids were making fun of. Yeah. And now, I ended up, being a cheerleader on captain of the team and all those things, with my limp, and,
So my students are going to get mad if I don't get the rest of your story, because you've accomplished great things. And as you just mentioned, as young as high school, you were the cheerleader, you were doing different things. So talk a little bit about that progression to when did you decide you wanted to be in Hollywood, and when did you start pursuing those kinds of things? Walk us through some of that.
Well, being a child in a wheelchair, I started becoming an artist because that was the choice available to me. So my mom got me all kinds of art supplies, and I started doing a lot of artwork and drawing, like literally all my dreams out on paper, across my room. And that developed into my getting an art scholarship for college. I went to the University of Florida on an art scholarship, and I learned a lot, and I was going to go into fashion design, but then a few events shifted gears for me, and I ended up moving to Atlanta. And there I was approached a few times about modeling. And so I didn't know enough about the business to feel safe in it. So I started taking classes at the Alliance Theater School. And then I worked for a casting director. I volunteered for a couple of years working for a casting director so I could learn the business on all sides. And soon I outgrew Atlanta and a few other life circumstances. I ended up moving to New York. And all this while having multiple surgeries rebuilding my leg. So I will say one thing. In the course of my career, sometimes I go, oh, why haven't I gotten further than I've gotten? Even though I know I can look at my career and say a lot of people would kill for that resume, right? But at the same time, I'm going, I know how hard I worked and I wish I'd gotten so much further. But then I have to stop myself and say, whoa, wait a minute. Who accomplished all this in this amount of time, dealing with a walking disability, having to change the industry due to discrimination against disability? I lost my parents, both of them, to cancer through those times. I beat cancer myself, had my leg rebuilt multiple times. And that's just the icing on the cake of all the things I did while pursuing my career. And I never, ever quit. Wow. I never gave up. I never stopped going for it. Even in 2016 and 2017, not that long ago, I had back-to-back major surgeries, and between the surgeries was having to find a way to keep working so I could keep my health insurance. And I even went to auditions in wheelchairs on crutches. I'd show up at a building, there'd be 2 flights of stairs straight up, and I got crutches, and I'd have to go up those stairs on the crutches and show up for that audition. And sometimes they were not thrilled to see that I was not walking, but I was like, well, what are you gonna do? I got to make a living. I got to keep going. And I just kept showing up for myself. And what I love to share with kids especially is that you have to keep showing up for yourself in life. You got to figure out what your dream is, what's drawing you the most, and show up for yourself. No matter what you're going through, show up. That is 90% of the battle. Just keep showing up. Keep doing your very best. All I can say is I look back and I say, I did my very best with every single thing that was on my plate every day. I got up no matter how I felt, and I went for it with every ounce of energy I had left. Even sometimes laid up going through cancer treatments, I wrote a screenplay and sold it. When I couldn't work, I found other ways to work by writing, by creating, by working on my craft, by learning. And these days, learning is so easy. You can get on YouTube, you can get online, you can get pretty much any tool you need for free online. So even when you're laid up, you can learn constantly. And I think the greatest actors and the greatest writers and the greatest artists out there spend their lives learning. I mean, their entire lives. I have mentors and friends that are literally in their 90s and 80s, and they're still learning.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I didn't pay her to say that, even though I'm a school teacher. It's so true that we've never lived in a better time as far as access to information and the ability to learn things. And as we look at your career, Eileen, you have to think, despite the obstacles, despite the disabilities and the discrimination against you, because you are committed to learning, that has opened doors, that has made it possible for you to appear in so many cool projects in Hollywood. And not just in Hollywood, you've done so many things with your life. And I think it's because of your commitment to learning and fighting for the underdog. I think that's an important part of who you are.
Yes. I had to fight really, really hard to change my industry in order for me to work in it. And I noticed that as soon as I moved to Los Angeles. I noticed it a little bit in New York, but it was mostly in Los Angeles where I saw that the way the industry used to be, they felt like a female with a flaw was unacceptable. And I have a limp, I have a spinal cord injury, I walk, but I walk differently, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Whatever is different about everybody is perfect exactly as it is. And if I could say one thing to kids, I'd say, whatever you are, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what your difference is. It was meant to be, and it's perfect, and you are perfect exactly as you are. And I knew that for some reason. I knew this was okay. My mother trained me that when she was alive on the planet, that everything about me was exactly as it was supposed to be for a good reason, and to go out there and make my mark on this world. And so I had to change my industry. I had to change the mindset. I had to advocate for many, many years, and I kept doing it. But there is a common theme, because I noticed the same thing that happened in the 5th grade has now happened in Hollywood. And that is that the cool kid, the most creative kids, the ones who are at the top of our industry, who are most creative, who have made a phenomenal impact on our industry, they're the most open-minded. They see the value in what I'm bringing to the table. So if you look at my resume, you'll see that very much the cutting edge, coolest shows are the ones hiring me. And that's the reality. I don't get hired on a lot of fluff shows. I get hired on the Sons of Anarchy and the New Amsterdam and the SWAT and the Watchmen and the edgy, cool shows, because those creators are courageous. And so I keep going back to this conversation that I've made up years ago, which is, in life, work with the cool kids. And the cool kids are not the ones that you think they are. The cool kids are the ones who are going after their dreams, and they are going after it with 100% authenticity and truth. And they're not afraid of what everybody else thinks. They're following their truth, and they're creating unique and wonderful things. And those people are not going to be afraid of your differences. They're going to welcome your differences. Cool people who are cool with themselves are going to welcome you as you are and see the value in you.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened for me in Hollywood now too.
That's so awesome. Well, I think we want to wrap with that. What a cool message to our kids. If the students watching this want to know more about you or follow your career, where's the best place for them to find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Eileen Grubba, EILEENGRUBBA. I'm on the same handle on Twitter. I'm also I have a public Facebook page that you'll see the little blue check mark that's also by the same name, Eileen Grubba. And I have a website that's eileengrubba.com. And if you want to see the shows airing, you can always go on IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database. And you can Google my name and find me there. And again, it's EILEENGRUBBA. You can pretty much find me anywhere by my name.
Eileen, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story with us today. What a pleasure and an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me, and go out and change the world, kids.
Thanks.